State Line, Nakusp, BC, September the 7th, 1960. This is Ross Fleming of Fleming Recordings, Nelson. We are interviewing Mr. Albert James Harrison, a long-time resident of Arrow Park and Nakusp, and a veteran bombardier of the Boer War. We are pleased to welcome Mr. Harrison to our program, Tales of the Kootenays. Now, Mr. Harrison, where were you born?
I was born in Stamford-le-Hope, Essex, England.
And that's near Southend-on-the-Sea?
That's about 16 miles from Southend-on-Sea, yes.
Oh, yes. And now, what year were you born?
1876.
Mm-hmm. And I understand that you enlisted in the Boer War. Could you tell me something about your experiences there?
Well, I enlisted in the Royal Horse Artillery in 1895. And, of course, our regiment fought in the South African War, 1899, 1900, up to 1902. We had quite a very hard trip going over. It was on an old-fashioned troop ship, old-fashioned freighter, I should say, and it took us a month to go over. The weather was bad the whole journey, and most of the troops were seasick nearly all of the time. We had horses on board, of course, and they had to be attended to. And so by the time we reached Cape Town, we were just about all in.
Yes, I see.
And we stayed in Cape Town, we disembarked and stayed there for a couple of days, then we went up country. And our first engagement was in the Battle of Magersfontein, which I guess, as you all know, was a serious reverse. We were under Lord Methuen, and the Boers were all entrenched, and we were up in open. We met them in open warfare. Pardon?
Speak up a bit more.
Oh. And we engaged them a whole day there, and quite a number of casualties, especially in the Black Watch. They went up in close formation, of course, to the Boers, who were entrenched, and they didn't have a chance at all. And towards the end of the day, I was wounded myself. Although I didn't realize that I was going to be the first one in the detachment to be wounded, but however it came my way, and the officer standing close to me said that it was really meant for him, because at that time the Boers were picking off the officers as much as they could. But I had my wounds dressed, and the doctor told me I was a very lucky man. It was very close shave. I was wounded through the groin and just missed my bladder. And I had my wounds dressed, and towards the end of the day I'd had an injection from the doctor's servant, and towards the end of the day I dozed off, and I found out towards dusk that I was there alone, that my battery had to cover the retreat. And in the chaos, of course, they had forgotten all about me, and I was left there alone on the veldt, and no doubt would have been taken prisoner had it not been that I happened to spot a vehicle which I found out to be an Australian ambulance, just a two-wheel affair with one horse, and they very kindly picked me up. It was a very hard ride all night long, and in the dark I wasn't able to lie down or sit down. I had to just hang on to straps in this ambulance. But I was very grateful to be picked up, I assure you.
Yes, that is, you were wounded in the open field, and
Yes,
you called it the veldt. Of course, that is correct. And
that's right.
but just for it clear, they make their record straight. It was out in the field of battle.
That's right, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, towards the close of the day, you know,
Yes.
the troops all had to retreat, of course.
Mm-hmm. Well, that,
However, I was reported missing, of course. I had a brother in the same battery as myself, and of course he very anxious about me and couldn't find out where I was or anything. But as soon as I was able to write, I was taken down to the base hospital in Wynberg in Cape Town. And as soon as I was able to write, of course, I wrote to my commanding officer and to my brother to let them know where I was. However, after about 8 weeks in hospital, I was passed out as fit to rejoin my regiment. The doctor who passed me said that he'd never seen such a miraculous
recovery?
Recovery, yes. He'd never seen anything like the way where I was wounded and hadn't broken a bone, you know, went right through my groin, yes.
Mm-hmm. And
so I went back to the battery and rejoined the regiment again.
I see.
And took
this sick bay was not in connection with your battery at all. It was in connection with the Australian troops, was it?
Oh no, it was for the whole of the fighting forces there.
See.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, that's very good. And you were finally...
I was finally invalided home with enteric fever.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
I see. Back to England.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Well, now, when did you come to Canada?
I came to Canada in 1907. I came out with the intention of farming on the prairie. I hired out with a man who was recommended to me by friends of his in England, and but I had a very poor impression. That year was a very bad year. The crops were very poor, and however, I stayed there the summer and the winter.
This was in Manitoba, was it?
In Manitoba, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then I heard about this wonderful fruit farming country here in BC, and so I bought a piece of land here. And I hadn't seen it, of course, and the following spring I came out to BC in 1908.
And that was to Arrow Park?
Arrow Park, yes.
How far is Arrow Park from Nakusp?
17 miles.
17 miles down
the lake.
River.
Mm-hmm.
Down the lake.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. And you didn't find it quite ideal fruit land, did you?
Oh dear, no. I was never surprised in all my life. It was nothing but forest, of course. I bought the land from the Kootenai Orchard Association, and I was one of the first settlers there. There were no roads, and my property was just straight forest, of course. And
were there many boats on the lake at that time?
At that time there were two boats. The Kootenai and the Roslyn were running.
Oh, yes.
The one went up the lake and the other down. They used to pass each other West des Mars, I think.
Oh, yes. And how long were you at the Arrow Park?
We stayed there for 20 years.
Wow.
I tried the fruit farming. I worked very hard night and day to clear up the land, and hoping that I would be able to get returns on fruit. But when the fruit did come along, I found that we were too far away from the market. We couldn't do anything about it. I used to sell my apples chiefly to the logging camps here for $1 a pound.
Wow.
Taking them by the sack.
Yes.
And Had it not been for logging starting up in that district, well, people couldn't have stayed there.
Yes, I see.
Because the majority of them had spent all the money they had saved, in trying to clear up the land.
Really, it was more suitable for logging and lumbering than
Oh, yes.
for fruit growing.
Oh, sure.
And now it's coming into that, into being as a logging and community, isn't it?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Yeah.
Very much. I understand that you had some little personal experiences there with wild animals.
Oh, yes, more or less. I was always fond of a bit of sport in the woods, and as a matter of fact, I was the first man to spot a bear in Arrow Park. It was in 1912, and I had the luck of killing the bear, but it was pretty close shave and almost got me. And the bear had a cub with him, and I didn't know at the time when I fired my first shot. I only had 5 rounds of ammunition, and the bear chased the cub into the thicket, into the woods, and stood up on its haunches and spotted me and came straight for me.
Was this a male bear?
Male bear, yes.
Male bear.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's useful.
I had the surprise of my life. I thought he would run away, and I didn't think for one moment that he would make for me, but he did. It was a piece of property that had been partly cleared, and he was coming, jumping over windrows of brush and that kind of thing. It was really difficult to get in a good shot.
Yes.
So I pumped 4 shell into him. He was still coming, and so I knew I only had 1 shell left, and he was still coming, so I waited until he got good and close, which he did. He got within 2 yards of me before I finally killed him.
Wow, isn't that that was wonderful.
I
You must have had pretty steady nerves to do that.
Well, I knew it was a case of either he or me, and I considered after I was very lucky. If the female bear had been around, why, it might have been the end of me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was the first bear that was shot in Arrow Park,
Wow.
and it caused quite a sensation.
Yes. Well, now, when did you come to Nakusp?
We stayed in Arrow Park until 1928. In the meantime, I joined the Forest Service in 1913 and stayed with them for about 11 years. And then I had the offer of a job with my brother-in-law, who was manager for a company by the name of Tadanac Incorporated. They made lacquer and paint and all that kind of thing for airplanes at that time. So he made me an offer, so we accepted, and we sold out at our park and went to New Jersey, 3,000 miles away,
Well,
hoping to stay there for the rest of our lives. But unfortunately, the Depression came along soon after we got there, and so we only stayed there for 4 years.
right.
My son, he was quite young then. He was only about 12 years of age, and he didn't like it there. He loved the mountains. He was born here, born in Nelson,
Mm-hmm.
and he very much wanted to come back, so I told him if he hurried up and got well, we'd come back.
Wow.
We had quite an experience coming back. We came back on a freighter from New York to Seattle.
Wow.
There were only 14 passengers, but we had a lovely time. We
Wow.
were 7 weeks on the water.
And that was in the hungry 30s.
Yes, and the fare was only $115 from New York to Seattle at that time,
Wow.
including board.
Well, that is quite interesting.
Oh, yes.
And
We had a lovely time there.
so the Depression was in the east as well as the west at that time.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Mhm.
Oh, we had a lovely trip, and lovely old captain there.
Well, then, did you come directly up to Nakusp from there?
We came to Nakusp in 1932.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Uh-huh. And what have you kept busy at since coming to Nakusp?
Well, when I arrived in Nakusp, I found, of course, things were very bad here, and quite a number of people were on relief, and there was no work to be had anywhere, and so I had a trade, of course. Now I had a little shop built, and
What was your trade?
I'm a harness maker by trade,
Oh, yes.
harness maker and collar maker. So I had a little shop built and started a little business of my own, which, by means of which we were able to exist anyway.
Well, I see. I had a brother, my brother-in-law was a harness maker too, back in the prairies.
Is that so?
Oh, yes.
Now I stayed in that little shop for 10 years.
Oh, yes. That'd bring you up to about 1942.
That's right, and then I joined the Tadanac Police in Trail.
Oh, yes.
I had a very nice post there. I was in charge of an office there at the hydrogen plant, where they had to have special passes to get in, you know, with that
Oh, yes.
heavier than water.
Oh, yes.
Heavy
Heavy water plant.
That's right, yes.
Well, that.
And,
how long were you with the Tadanac Police?
About 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
up to about the end of the war, you see, and then we came back. I came back here to Nakusp.
Nakusp still had its attractions for you, and you came back here.
Oh yes, yes.
Well, you have a
we
very
still have the house, of course, and
yes.
and,
You have a very fine territory here. It's the scenery is wonderful,
oh yes.
and such wide valleys, and so many
It's a lovely little
ways.
town. We like it very much here, and my boy, of course, finished his schooling here. And then he joined the Air Force, really, during the war, and he was overseas for about 4 years, in North Africa and England, different places.
I see.
And
Now tell us something about your wife. Where was your wife born, and
my wife,
when did you meet her?
my wife was born in Kent, England.
Mm-hmm.
A place by the name of Sheerness on Sea.
Oh, yes.
As I met her, I think it was it was after I left the army. About in 1903, I would say, that I first met my wife.
Just a little bit louder, please.
My wife didn't join me until 1912.
Oh, yes.
She came out 1912, and we were married here in Nakusp.
Seemed you survived the bear. She came out and
Yeah.
made her home here.
Yes, I still have the old pelt up in the garage. And
You have, eh?
we had it on the floor for quite a number of years. And,
Mm-hmm.
but,
That's quite a memento.
oh yes. I've shot other bears since, but I've never had one attack me
Yes, I see.
since.
Well, now I think we've pretty well covered. Is there anything else that you would like to say about your district or about Nakusp?
Oh, I don't know. Of course, when I returned from trail, from the police, I took on a job for the Bell Lumber Company in the office there until I was old enough to receive old age pension. You know.
Oh, yes.
And then I retired.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sure that you've been a good citizen of Nakusp. You're well known here and well liked, and I hope you have a good many years. And I'm very sorry that Mrs. Harrison has her little troubles, and I hope that she gets over them soon, and that you'll both live to enjoy life in Nakusp for years and years to come.
Thank you very much.
And
I'm
enjoy
sure.
it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.